Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, picture this. You've got a stack of articles, and they cover, well, everything from getting better sleep to prophecies about ancient empires and even the design of a wasp. That's what we're diving into today.
That's right. Our source material, it's a collection from Awake magazine, March 2011. It's pretty amazing how much territory one publication can cover.
Absolutely. We're talking health tips, history, personal stories,
Mm.
different religious views, even some science tidbits and world news.
Mm.
So our mission is basically to unpack all this, find the key insights, the really fascinating stuff, and help you see how it might connect.
Sounds good. Let's jump in.
Okay, let's get started. We're kicking off with something, well, it affects all of us, health. And the sources start with a really positive message.
Mm.
You can improve your health. It kind of pushes back on that idea that it's all just fate or, genes.
Yeah, and they use real examples like Rustam in Russia. He worked at a computer, felt run down. He changed some habits, quit smoking, watched his eating.
Right. It wasn't just minor tweaks. He really shifted his routine because he felt so lethargic. And the results were, well, pretty dramatic. He said he took maybe 2 sick days a year for 7 years, felt awake, alert.
The big difference. Then there's Ram in Nepal. His family had ongoing respiratory problems, eye infections, all linked to poor sanitation where they lived. Making changes, especially with hygiene, helped a lot.
So these stories, they're not just stories, are they? They show that taking action matters. And the sources kind of boil this down into what they call 5 basic keys to better health. Ready for key 1?
Let's do it. Key 1 is eat wisely, and it nails it with a quote from Michael Pollan. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants.
That really says it all, doesn't it? The sources emphasize fresh, real food over processed stuff. They warn about all the sugar, salt, unhealthy fats, linking them to heart disease, stroke, cancer, serious stuff.
And simple cooking changes, too, like steam or bake instead of frying. Use herbs for flavor, not just salt. And obviously, cook meat properly. Avoid spoiled food. Basic but crucial.
The not too much part. That's huge. They mention the World Health Organization, this global rise in obesity, even in kids. It's not just looks, it's diabetes, other risks. They suggest parents can lead by example, managing portions.
And mostly plants. It means making fruits, veggies, whole grains the main event, maybe swap meat for fish sometimes, cut back on refined things like white bread, white rice. They're stripped of nutrients. Oh, and it warns about dangerous fad diets and helping kids learn to like healthy snacks, nuts, fruit, not just chips and candy.
Hydration, too. Really stressed. We all need plenty of water, unsweetened drinks. More if it's hot or you're working hard. Helps digestion, flushes toxins, good for skin, even weight loss. But watch out for sugary drinks. They mentioned 1 soda a day could add like 15 pounds in a year.
And the need for clean water.
Yeah.
It's a massive issue in some places. They acknowledge that. Tainted water is deadly, the source quotes a statistic. It kills more people than wars or earthquakes, including thousands of children daily. So boiling water, treating it, it's life or death.
Wow. And for babies, they include the WHO advice. Breastfeeding only for 6 months, then adding food until maybe age 2. Seems like very thorough advice on eating.
Moving on to key 2. Take care of basic body needs. It's grounded in, well, self-respect, quoting Ephesians 5:29 about how no one hates their own body but cares for it.
So this includes rest, getting enough sleep. There's that proverb, Ecclesiastes 4.6, better is a handful of rest than a double handful of hard work. So true, but hard to do sometimes. Sleep often gets cut.
But the sources say it's not optional. It's when your body and brain repair. Studies show it helps memory, mood, immunity, and lack of sleep, linked to higher risks of diabetes, stroke, heart disease, depression, maybe even Alzheimer's down the line. The advice is simple. Listen to your body. Don't just power through with caffeine.
Most adults need 7-8 hours, right? Teens more. And they mention the risks for tired teens, psychological problems, even falling asleep driving. And if you're sick, like with a cold, extra sleep, fluids, essential.
Also under key 2, teeth. Brushing, flossing, especially at night. Fights decay, gum disease, tooth loss. They make a good point. You need your teeth to actually benefit from food. They even mention elephants starving when their teeth wear out. Teaching kids these habits is a lifelong gift.
And the last part here is seeing a doctor. Some things just need professional help. Early diagnosis. Usually better outcomes, less cost. Find the cause. Don't just treat symptoms. Regular checkups, prenatal care. It's all preventative. Though they add a perspective, doctors aren't miracle workers and refer to a future hope for complete healing from revelation.
Okay, key 3. Keep yourself moving. So if 1 and 2 are internal care, this is about being active.
Yeah, and they capture the importance with this quote from Emory University School of Medicine. If exercise were a pill, it would be the most widely prescribed medication in the world. That hits home.
It really does. The benefits listed are clear. Happier, think better, more energy, productive, helps with weight. And good news, it doesn't need to be painful or extreme. Moderate, regular exercise does the trick.
Like what kind? Jogging, brisk walking, biking, active sports. Enough to get your heart rate up, maybe break a sweat. Builds endurance, prevents heart attack, stroke. And mixing in some strength training. Good for bones, muscles, metabolism, helps weight control too.
A really practical tip: use your feet, walk. Don't always drive or take the elevator. Sometimes walking is faster anyway. And for parents, encourage kids to play physically, outdoors if possible. Build strength, coordination, better than just video games.
And it's never too late to start. Even older adults benefit, though. Yes, check with the doctor if you're older or have health issues. Starting gradually helps muscle, bone mass, prevents falls.
And remember Restum, his story pops up again. He and his wife started jogging 5 days a week, had excuses at first, like anyone would, but having a partner helped them stick with it. Became a habit they actually enjoyed.
Key 4 is protect your health. This uses a proverb, Proverbs 22.3. Shrewd is the one that has seen the calamity and proceeds to conceal himself. Being proactive, basically.
And a huge part of this is just cleanliness, hand washing. The sources quote the U.S. CDC calling it the single most important way to stop infection spreading. Up to 80% of infections passed by unclean hands. That's wow.
So wash often. Before eating, cooking, after the toilet, pets, changing diapers. Soap and water, they note, are better than just sanitizer. Teach kids this. Keep hands away from mouth, eyes. Daily bathing, clean clothes. Fundamental.
Avoiding infectious diseases, that means being smart. Avoid close contact or sharing cups if someone has a cold or flu. Blood-borne diseases like hepatitis B, C, HIV/AIDS require specific precautions, safe sex, no shared needles. Vaccinations help for some things, but caution is always needed.
And insects, can't forget those. Mosquitoes, ticks, use nets especially for kids. Repellents, don't just hang out unprotected outdoors where they bite.
Keeping your home clean is part of protecting health, too. Tidy inside and out. No standing water for mosquitoes to breed in. Cover food and garbage so you don't attract pests carrying diseases. If there's no toilet, build a simple latrine and cover it to keep flies away. They spread eye infections, other things.
Finally, under Key 4, avoiding injury. Follow safety rules work. Driving, biking, save vehicles. Use protective gear, glasses, helmets, seat belts, hearing protection. Limit sun exposure. Skin cancer risk, aging. And, a big one, quitting smoking. Huge benefits for heart, lungs, stroke risk.
Okay, the last key, Key 5. Motivate yourself and your family. This is about putting knowledge into action. Cites Proverbs 13.16. Everyone shrewd will act with knowledge.
Pro step, keep learning. Be open to health info, willing to adjust. And there's this powerful idea that good habits benefit future generations. Proverbs 22.6, parents setting the example.
Yeah.
It's huge. Diet, cleanliness, sleep, exercise, safety.
Then the sources ask, what more is needed? Because knowing isn't always enough, is it? Changing habits, especially breaking bad ones, it's hard. Fear of illness might not even be enough motivation for some. So what's needed is, well, a higher purpose.
And what does that look like? Could be doing it for others, your spouse, kids, aging parents, contributing to the community, and involve love, concern beyond just yourself.
And they suggest an even stronger motivation, gratitude to your Creator. Citing Psalm 36.9 about valuing life, being healthy lets you serve God more actively. The sources present this as the highest motivation possible.
The health section finishes nicely by revisiting Ram from Nepal. He shared how applying specific advice from other awake. Articles on nutrition, hygiene, hand washing really worked. His family got sick less. The eye infection stopped. He even learned from a Bible video about avoiding insects. Practical stuff.
And the advice on starting is so realistic. Start small. Don't aim too high at first. Cut down on junk food. Maybe don't cut it out completely right away. Sleep a bit earlier. Exercise a bit more. Something is better than nothing.
And they're honest. Habits take time. Weeks, months. Don't give up if you slip up or don't see results instantly. Keep at it.
The final thought brings it back to reality. Perfect health isn't achievable now due to inherent human frailty. Getting sick isn't always your fault, and don't stress too much. They quote Jesus in Luke 12.25, "Who of you, by being anxious, can add a cubit to his lifespan?" The goal is to avoid things that needlessly harm your life quality, while hoping for that future time from Isaiah 33.24 when no resident will say, "I am sick."
That's a really comprehensive look at health from these sources. Okay, now shifting gears quite a bit from taking care of the body to, well, some very different views on how the body is treated, especially in worship. The sources mention self-inflicted pain.
Yes, that was quite a contrast. It mentions practices like self-flagellation, whipping oneself, extreme fasting, wearing irritating hair shirts, things practiced by some historically and even by some modern religious figures.
And the motivation given is interesting. It's seen as a way to join with Christ's suffering, to help gain redemption from sin.
But, and this is key, the source argues strongly from the Bible's perspective. The Bible does not recommend or approve of worship that involves hurting yourself.
That's a direct clash with the health advice we just discussed. The sources point out the Bible actually encourages caring for your body, like in Ephesians 5, where a husband should love his wife like his own body, implying a natural, healthy self-care.
Right. It connects back to those health principles. Again, moderate exercise, good diet, staying active, protecting health. The source basically asks, how can you be told to protect your body and harm it simultaneously? It doesn't line up.
What about the idea of reenacting Jesus' suffering?
The source explains that the suffering Bible figures endured was always persecution from others, never self-inflicted. Christians were meant to draw strength from Christ's example to endure hardship, not cause it themselves. Tormenting your own body isn't imitating Jesus, it argues.
They use an analogy.
Yeah, a helpful one. If your friend calmly endured an attack, you wouldn't imitate them by attacking yourself. You'd try to be calm if you were attacked. Christians imitate Jesus' endurance under persecution, not the actions of those who hurt him.
So the bottom line presented is, intentionally harming your body is unacceptable to God. They mention the Old Testament law forbidding the Israelites from cutting themselves, a pagan practice. The implication is that other forms of self-harm, like scarring from whips, would also be wrong.
It emphasizes respecting the body as God's creation, citing Psalm 139 about being wonderfully made.
So the conclusion drawn is that self-mortification doesn't improve your relationship with God. According to these sources, it harms it and twists the gospel message. They quote the Apostle Paul in Colossians saying harsh treatment of the body has no value in fighting fleshly desires.
And this is contrasted with the idea of true worship found in the Bible, described not as a heavy burden, but as refreshing and light, referencing Matthew 11.
A really striking difference in perspective there. Okay, let's shift again, totally different direction now. Let's listen for the sounds of ancient Israel. Music played a big role, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It was integral. In worship, for signals, soothing royalty like David did for Saul, celebrations. Genesis mentions Jubal as the ancestor of musicians playing harps and pipes.
But the Bible doesn't give many details about the instruments themselves, does it?
Not really. So scholars, as the source notes, have to piece it together from archaeology, other ancient writings. It's like detective work.
What instruments do they mention?
Well, tambourines, small hand drums, often played by women at festivals. Think Miriam at the Red Sea, or women celebrating David's victories. They've found ancient figurines holding similar instruments.
Sistrums, what are those?
Like musical rattles. An oval metal frame, handle, made sharp ringing sounds. Only mentioned once in the Bible, when the Ark was brought to Jerusalem. Jewish tradition later linked them to sad occasions. Cymbals, too, but not just big crash cymbals. Some were small, maybe 10 centimeters, more like castanets, making a tinkling sound, but larger ones, too.
And the kinnor, that's the harper lyre, right?
Well, yes, probably the most famous. David's instrument. Lots of ancient pictures of it exist, played with fingers or a pick.
Then the nebel.
Similar, another portable string instrument, but the specifics are a bit hazy from the text alone.
What about wind instruments?
Trumpets, made of silver, specifically instructed by God for the priests. Used for signals, temple events, festivals. Different blasts meant different things. We don't know exactly what they look like from Bible times, only later art like on the Arch of Titus in Rome.
And the horn, the shofar?
Right, made from a ram's or goat's horn, mentioned over 70 times, straight or curved. A signaling instrument, loud, hollow sound, used for religious timing like the Sabbath, but also famously in war, Gideon's army used them.
Yeah, there's mentioned.
Briefly, yeah. Bells, flutes, lutes, and Nebuchadnezzar's orchestra in Babylon is mentioned in Daniel's zither, pipe, even bagpipe. So the point is, music was just part of life back then, in the palace, temples, villages, homes, not just special occasions.
From ancient sounds to ancient empires, let's widen the lens to Greece. The sources position it as a major world power with deep connections to Bible history and prophecy.
Yes, the fifth world power in the biblical narrative, rising in the 4th century BCE after Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, led, of course, by Alexander the Great.
And even though his empire broke apart after he died, Greek influence, culture, language, philosophy, it just spread everywhere and lasted for ages.
Right. And while no Bible books were written during Greece's peak power, it features heavily in prophecies written before it rose, and the New Testament, the Christian Greek scriptures, reflects its ongoing influence.
Like the Decapolis, those 10 Hellenistic cities.
Exactly. Mentioned in the Gospels, located in and around Israel. And history and archaeology back this up. We find ruins of theaters, temples, baths in those areas. It connects the text to the ground.
The sources also use the book of Acts to show the Bible's historical reliability, comparing it to what we know about Greece, like Athens being full of idols.
Which historical sources confirm Athens was packed with idols and shrines.
And Acts saying Athenians loved talking about new ideas.
Also confirmed by ancient writers like Thucydides. They were known for constant debate and conversation.
Paul talking with Epicurean and Stoic philosophers there fits perfectly. Athens was the philosophy hub. Even the altar to an unknown god might have a real historical basis.
And Paul quoting Greek poets, it shows he knew the culture. He likely quoted Aratus and Cleanthes. It makes the account feel very real.
What about Ephesus? Acts describes the riot over Artemis worship.
Also lines up. Ephesus was devoted to Artemis. Her temple was huge, one of the wonders of the ancient world. The silversmith, Demetrius, making idols. Archaeology confirms guilds of silversmiths existed there. It all fits.
So a scholar quoted concludes the account of Paul in Athens sounds like an eyewitness wrote it.
But the most striking part maybe is the Bible prophecy about Greece,
Yeah.
specifically Daniel, writing about 200 years before Alexander.
What did Daniel predict?
Daniel 8 describes this vision. A male goat with a big noticeable horn comes from the west, moves incredibly fast, and shatters a ram with 2 horns. The goat becomes powerful, but then suddenly its big horn breaks. 4 smaller horns grow in its place, pointing in different directions.
And Daniel interprets it.
Explicitly. Daniel 8 says the ram is Medo-Persia. The goat is Greece, and the great horn is its first king. Daniel 11 adds that when the kingdom breaks, his successors won't be his own descendants.
How did that play out?
Amazingly accurately. Alexander became king 336 BCE, conquered Persia rapidly, the Great Horn, became immensely powerful, then died young, just 32. The horn was broken. No single heir, no offspring took over. Instead, eventually, his 4 top generals divided the empire between them. Lysimachus, Cassander, Seleucus, Ptolemy, the 4 horns, just as predicted.
Wow. Any other prophecies mentioned?
Yes, the destruction of Tyre, the Phoenician city. Ezekiel and Zechariah predicted it centuries earlier. Ezekiel even included this odd detail: Tyre's stones and dust would be thrown in the very midst of the water. How was that fulfilled? By Alexander again. During a siege in 332 BCE, the main city was on an island. To reach it, his army literally scraped up the ruins of the old mainland city, stones, timbers, dust, and threw it all into the sea to build a causeway out to the island. Fulfilled Ezekiel's prophecy down to the smallest detail.
Incredible. But the sources also make a point about Alexander's conquests.
Right. They didn't bring lasting peace. It illustrates that Bible principle. Man has dominated man to his injury.
But they end on a note of hope.
Yes, pointing to the Bible's promise of God's kingdom, a government that will replace human rule and bring real peace and security, citing passages from Isaiah, Daniel, Revelation.
With Jesus Christ as king, motivated by love, helping the poor, a very different kind of ruler. And they note this was part 5 of a series, with Rome coming next.
From that huge historical scale, let's zoom right back in. A personal story this time, but rooted in something ancient: shepherding. Alimbek Bekmanov from Kyrgyzstan.
Right. He grew up near Lake Issyk-Kul, became a shepherd young. And his experiences, they offer amazing insights into what that life is really like.
He talks about leading sheep way up into the mountains over 9,000 feet and contrasts routes. A short, dangerous one near cliffs, wolves, versus his uncle's choice, a longer, safer path. His uncle's motto: Alimbek, think about the sheep, not about yourself. The flock's well-being came first, always.
And different shepherds' habits. Some slept late, sheep grazed in the heat, got weak. His uncle, up at 4 a.m., get the sheep out grazing in the cool air. Stronger flock. That saying, looking at the sheep, you see the shepherd. Really powerful.
Taking care of them was constant. Daily checks. Flies laying eggs in their navels. Sounds awful, but could cause intense pain, death. Had to be treated, counting them every night. Up to 800 sheep took practice. Essential to know if any were lost.
And searching for lost ones. His uncle would go out, even in bad weather, dark, for just one lamb, calling out loudly, partly to scare predators, partly so the lost lamb would hear his voice, feel safe, and come back.
They even named some sheep, based on how they looked or acted. They weren't just numbers.
What about difficult sheep?
Huh? Yeah, the stubborn ones. They wouldn't listen, and worse, others would follow them. Needed training, discipline, sometimes isolation. And the source mentions, grimly, the ones that never learned often ended up as dinner. A stark lesson. Alimbek's life then took a sharp turn. Martial arts background, Soviet army. He comes back home in 1990. His old buddies are now a criminal gang. They offer him everything, money, power, the works if he joins.
But right then, he meets Jehovah's Witnesses. And they had answers to questions that had been bothering him, like, why do we die? They showed him Romans 5:12. He learned about Jesus, the hope of paradise on earth from Psalms, John, Revelation.
His reaction was visceral. That's how it should be. Finding this truth gave him the strength to turn down the gang's offer. He saw a path toward becoming a different kind of shepherd, a spiritual one.
There's that story about the faith healer, too.
Right. The healer said he had a gift, told him to get an amulet. The witnesses showed him Deuteronomy 18, how the Bible warns against spiritism. He had nightmares after, but praying helped him break free, convinced him Jehovah was the true shepherd. It connects him to figures like David, the shepherd king, who wrote Psalm 23, Jehovah is my shepherd. Alimbek wanted to imitate Jesus, the shepherd of the sheep from Hebrews. He got baptized in 1993.
And that important meeting story is incredible, about 70 relatives studying. The village head arranges a huge meeting, 1,000 people, for them to explain their beliefs.
But opponents stirred up trouble, planned violence. Alimbek's older brother, who just started studying but was known as a fighter, stood between the mob and the witnesses. Just stood there, allowed them to leave safely, and the result. Many who attended that meeting later became witnesses. Over 50 in their village alone.
The story also introduces Gulmira, also from a shepherd family, also a witness. Her mother studied when it was banned under the Soviets. Gulmira became a full-time minister, a pioneer.
Alimbek and Gulmira had a long-distance relationship for a while, lived far apart, then she moved even farther to the Russia branch office. How did they manage? Letters. And they agreed to read the same Bible verses each day and share thoughts. For 3 years, he learned Russian, served in the first Kyrgyz congregation.
They married in '98. He joined her at the branch, working on Kyrgyz translation. He prayed for wisdom. She helped him adjust.
Then the team moved to Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan's capital, in 2004. He was appointed to the national committee overseeing the work. He shares the growth stats from 7 Kyrgyz congregations, then to over 20 now, plus many groups. Kyrgyz speakers are now 40% of the witnesses there.
Then they learned English, went to the U.S. headquarters in 2008. He attended a special school.
They end feeling better equipped to serve back home, really feeling Psalm 23.1 from 3 in their own lives, seeing Jehovah as their shepherd.
And the sources briefly mentioned Ruth, too. The Moabite widow, loyal to her mother-in-law Naomi, determined to worship Jehovah, left her homeland. Others saw her worth better than 7 sons. Married Boaz, became an ancestor of David and Jesus. Loyalty and faith rewarded.
A really moving personal story. Shows the power of finding purpose.
Okay, shifting from personal faith to a much harder topic, religious intolerance. The sources use Gene Crespin's work to explore this dark chapter of history.
Yes, his Book of Martyrs, published 1554 in Geneva. It documents the suffering of religious dissenters in 16th century Europe. A tough read, but important.
The sources start with a brutal account from 1546 France. 14 men burned alive, their crimes, meeting privately, praying, singing psalms, taking the Lord's Supper differently, rejecting Catholic practices they saw as idolatry.
Chilling details, like challenging the idea of transubstantiation by asking if the communion bread tasted like meat, singing songs while burning, priests trying to shut them down, one priest declaring they were damned. Horrific.
Crespin himself experienced intolerance. Studied law, saw someone burn for heresy, got accused himself, fled to Geneva, became a printer.
He printed works by reformers Calvin, Luther, Knox, and Bibles. But the Book of Martyrs became his legacy, listing executions from 1415 to 1554.
Why write such a book? The sources say it was partly to condemn Catholic persecution, but also to encourage Protestants, show their suffering was like that of early Christians. A record of heroes, examples to follow.
He used official records, trial notes, eyewitness accounts, letters from prison. He felt their faith deserved to be remembered forever.
The issues they died for. Images in worship, purgatory, prayers for the dead, the nature of the Mass, the Pope's authority. These were the burning questions of the day, literally.
But, and this is a really crucial point the sources make sure to include, while Crespin focused on Catholics persecuting Protestants, Protestants also persecuted Catholics with, quote, much the same ferocity. It wasn't one-sided. It was an era of widespread violent intolerance.
The section connects this history to Revelation 18.24 about false religion being stained with the blood of prophets and holy ones. And Revelation 6, the idea that the blood of faithful martyrs cries out for justice. It acknowledges the sincerity of many who suffered back then on various signs.
A very sobering look at history. Now for something completely different again. A quick science interlude. Was it designed? Focusing on nature's ingenuity.
This time, it's the female wood-boring wasp. Specifically, its ovipositor, that needle it uses to lay eggs inside pine trees.
And it's not just a needle, it's complex. Two shafts, interlocked, covered with backward-pointing teeth, like tiny rasps.
Okay, how does it work without breaking? This is the cool part.
One shaft's teeth grip the wood. The other shaft slides forward a tiny bit. Then its teeth grip, and the first shaft slides forward. It's this rapid back-and-forth push-pull motion.
Like it's sawing its way in.
Kind of. It allows it to drill almost an inch into solid wood with very little force, and crucially, without buckling, it walks itself in.
And scientists notice this.
Yep. They've made a prototype neurosurgical probe based on it. Silicon needle, 2 oscillating parts, micro teeth.
For brain surgery.
That's the potential, to get deep into the brain with minimal damage.
And there's another advantage.
Flexibility. Unlike rigid probes, this prototype might be able to navigate around high-risk brain areas, following the safest path. Could mean fewer incisions needed. That's according to New Scientist, quoted in the source.
Amazing technology inspired by an insect. So the question lingers. Chance or design?
Makes you think.
Okay, from the micro-level design of a wasp, let's zoom out for our Watching the World segment. Quick global snapshots.
First, Ireland. Citing the Irish Times, trust in the Catholic Church plummeted there due to scandals. More than half interviewed had little or no trust. And the National Catholic Reporter called the abuse crisis the largest institutional crisis in centuries.
Then, the Philippines. A skills mismatch. Manila Bulletin reported many college grads couldn't find relevant jobs, ending up in clerical or fast food work. Government was pushing shorter technical courses.
India. This one's wild. Calcutta's Howrah Bridge corroding because of spit. Specifically, spit containing gutka, a corrosive beetle mix. The Telegraph said it had thinned the protective steel covers on pillars significantly since 2007, and that bridge sees 500,000 pedestrians daily.
Italy held its first divorce fair. Corriere della Sera listed the services. Marriage agencies for new partners, travel for singles, lawyers, accountants, psychologists for the divorce itself. A sign of the times, perhaps.
Ancient DNA news. Sequencing hair from a 4,000-year-old Greenlander suggested Siberian origins, reported Reuters.
And a quick fact from the Collect and Learn bit. How many Jehovah's Witnesses in Britain at that time? The source says 133,000.
Just a few glimpses of different things happening around the world then.
Wow. We've covered so much ground today, seriously. From practical health tips to deep dives into ancient history and prophecy, personal stories, different views on worship, the horrors of intolerance, amazing natural design, and those quick world facts.
Yeah, we really tried to dig into this stack of articles, pull out the key insights, the surprising connections, the different perspectives offered.
So as you've been listening, what stands out? Think about the contrasts, that drive for health versus beliefs involving self-harm. Ancient music and verified history versus the painful reality of intolerance then and now. The incredible detail in nature versus, well, the messiness of human affairs sometimes.
What was the most thought-provoking point for you? From this whole landscape of information we explored, what's the thread you might want to pull on a bit more in your own thinking or learning? Something to mull over.